How would you like a way to approach food that gets you feeling healthier, more energy as well, but doesn't feel so rigid, so controlled, where you don't have to count and you don't have to keep track of every single bite of food? If that sounds exciting to you, and I hope it does, you're going to learn more in this episode. So this is part 2 of our intuitive wellness series, where I'm showing you how to go beyond resolutions, fitness resolutions, to really make them stick. Now, if you missed part 1, make sure you go back for that. That was all about intuitive fitness. So how to make workouts more enjoyable, because I will always say that the number one key to healthy eating in a balanced way is actually to reconnect with your body, and movement is the best way to do that. So watch part 1 first and then come here. So just like we did in part 1, I'm going to divide this into 3 really easy to follow segments, showing you the traditional way we usually do healthy eating and why that fails, showing you a new approach, and then also giving you action steps to make it work. This is not just about theory here. This is about how do we actually get you moving forward. And lastly, I'm going to share with you 7 foods that almost everyone will want to add to their daily meals or to their weekly meals. I want to start by prefacing this by saying this is not the episode to give you a 6-pack. This is not the clean eating episode. When you talk about health and nutrition and you're doing it in a balanced, sustainable way, for many people, that doesn't mean the level of fat loss that you will see that people are doing for extreme dieting, like they would see for a bikini body competition. That's not what we are aiming for here. I want you to feel good in your body. If you have natural weight loss that occurs, that is great. But anyone who tells you that you can eat intuitively and what you really love and enjoy and feel good about food, and you can also really super restrict what you're having and get a 6-pack if it's not genetically easier for you, it's just not true. I'm sorry. I've been in the fitness world since I was 17 and I'm nearly 40. So I want to make that clear. If that's what you're looking for, you might not be ready for this yet. And I really do sympathize, because before we get into all of this, I will share with you, if you're new here and you don't already know my story, is that I was a chronic dieter for 7 years before I ever got in the fitness industry. I had a whole nother career and I had an eating disorder, and that was orthorexia. I was obsessed with healthy eating. There was one time in particular that I always bring up. I knew the calories in everything. You could give me any food, any mainstream restaurant, and I would know the calories. So I wasn't fueling properly. I had these binges where I would go and buy Cool Whip. The Americans, you know what this is, the 0-calorie whipped cream alternative. They gave me a sense of sweetness without giving me any sugar or additional calories. I would also chew loads of 0 sugar juicy fruit gum for the same reasons. And I would go through packs of this. I'm talking about I remember sitting on the floor in my Craigslist rented subletted bedroom in my early 20s on the floor eating Cool Whip with a spoon, and also multiple packs of juicy fruit gum gone, because I would chew it until the sweetness was gone and then I'd move on to the next stick. And I was at that time getting so many compliments on how dedicated I was to my nutrition. So I want to give you a different strategy here, because it's now been 13 years since my last diet. 13 years, and even longer since that juicy fruit binge. And looking back, I can't even imagine doing things differently than how I do now. Weight has been stable, healthy. I'm the strongest, fittest I've ever been, and I'm nearly 40. So this is to show you that it is possible to be healthy. It is possible to feel more in balance with food. And it is possible to do it without all these insane restrictions. Segment 1, first part of 3 here, understanding why traditional healthy diets fail. So traditional healthy diet, and we want to be clear here that unfortunately the fitness and wellness space has kind of made it interlocking terms, that health and diet are the same, and they are not. We can talk about diet in terms of the way you generally eat, but when we're talking about it as restricting what you eat or depriving yourself quite a lot, that is not the same as health. And what the wellness industry has done really well, they have amazing PR, is convinced you that it is. Because really, traditional nutrition, in quotes, because it doesn't nourish you, is all about willpower, control, counting. It's about good foods. It's about bad foods, cravings, comparison, loss of enjoyment, and if we're really honest, eating disorders. It is not about health. It is about ignoring your body cues so you can look a certain way. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, well, I don't want to do that anymore. Or you might still be in the camp of, well, I'm only going to do it temporarily, so why does it really matter? And I will share with you the science of why it matters quite a lot a little bit later. But first, let's go into some of the downsides of this right now. When you are in traditional dieting, there's an episode I want to bring up that I highly encourage you to listen to after this, which is episode 179 on Feel Good Naked. It's called Why We Need More Than Willpower, and it's with a addiction psychiatrist called Dr. Daniel Hochman. He's the founder of selfrecovery.org, and he works with people who have all sorts of addictions. We're talking about everything from cocaine to food to sex to everything in between. And his perspective is really interesting because what he shares, and this relates directly to those of us who are stuck in chronic dieting because we are obsessed with food, is that the substance is not the problem. It is the underlying reasons why you are going for it. And so the problem with traditional dieting is that we are always trying to fix the substance, control the substance, the food, how much you have of it, avoiding it, changing it, instead of looking at the underlying reasons of why you are struggling so much to find balance with it. Because a traditional diet doesn't care about that healing. That takes too long. Traditional diet wants to show your physical results because they know that's what sells. Unfortunately, in order for you to have those results, if you haven't done this underlying work that we're going to talk about a little bit later, it's going to lead you to a lot more stress and anxiety. Trying to control every part of your food is not a relaxing way to live. It develops an unhealthy relationship with your body, with food, with fitness, to the point of disorder for a lot of people. So it's creating this chronic problem, and yet we go back to it again and again. And something I will never understand is we see this statistic every year. 90 to 97% of all people, so 90 of 100 people, up to 97 of 100 people will always gain back the weight and then some that they lose in a traditional diet. So 3 to 10 people of 100 are successful in maintaining that weight for more than 3 years. I don't know how you can possibly call that an approach worth replicating. If anything else, if I said, oh, hey, there's this medication and 97 of you of 100 are going to die if you take it, but 3 of you will live. Do you think that's a marketable solution? So we want to take you to a different perspective, because what if healthy eating could be enjoyable? What if it wasn't about depriving yourself and binging on juicy fruit gum like I did? What if it wasn't about weighing your food all the time or knowing how many calories are in an apple? What if it were just about having healthy food that nourishes you, also having grandma's chocolate brownie recipe or those vegan fries you love? What if your nutrition could be a gateway to more strength and energy, and yes, still healthy results? As I said to you just a little bit ago, I finished my last diet over 13 years ago, and I have maintained health since then without counting a single thing. Totally different approach called intuitive nutrition. And that's what we're going to go over now. Segment 2. So intuitive nutrition is not intuitive eating. And I want to be very clear about that because it's easy to think they are the same. They overlap, and we'll talk about some ways in which they do. But intuitive eating is more about healing your relationship with food. However, intuitive nutrition is also looking at being very thoughtful about choosing foods which will nourish you. And that's kind of an additional step. So I like to think of it as intuitive eating is the first part of this, and then intuitive nutrition you can extend beyond. So in both of them, you are following your internal body cues versus external rules about how you should eat. It's not the time of day. It's not about how many calories or how much your food weighs or how many macros or to lose X amount of weight. It is all about internal cues. When am I hungry? When am I full? When do I need specific foods? And if you think your body's not capable of this, just imagine certain times of when you're menstruating, right? What kind of foods do you want? Mostly you are probably craving something which is a little heavier, a little bit more comforting. You probably are not wanting so many salads. Not everyone. This is your body telling you this is what we need. So you are capable of it. It's just about retraining to find that mind-body connection in. It's looking at minimizing cravings, not with deprivation, saying, hey, you can't have this. Like a teenager. I always give this example. You have this inner teenager when you have an eating disorder or any issues, you can't have this. What do you think the response is going to be? We've all been that teenager. When we're told no, we want it more. So you're managing cravings by actually listening to your body so that it doesn't come to the point where your body feels like you never listen, and so it's just going to take the food when it can, which is what leads to those binges. It's about nourishing your body over restricting it. It's about flexibility and balance, being compassionate with yourself when maybe you don't eat the way you think you should, and balancing foods to give your body energy, but also that nurture your soul. Ultimately, it's about more than just labels. And it's also about coming up with more coping tools for your emotions, because most of you have probably found that food is what you go to when you're stressed, upset, grieving. This is natural. This is human. The problem is when it's your only solution all the time. You don't have anything else. You don't have a therapist. You don't have a friend or family member you can talk to. You don't journal. You don't meditate. You don't focus on getting better sleep to help control the emotions. When you have one coping tool, you are going to feel very out of equilibrium, very unbalanced. That's where cravings come in. This is also something I realized only really recently I had with drinking, for example, that for me it was a stress and anxiety reducer. And it was because I didn't have enough other easier coping mechanisms to deal with those emotions. And now that I do, I'm not telling you to take away your drinks. I'm just saying, looking at the relationship between these substances. Now let's go into the science behind intuitive nutrition, because this is what I find fascinating. And it's often where a lot of people are a little bit converted to this idea. Number one point here is that satiety is about so much more than what you eat. Satiety is the sensation of being full and fulfilled. When you have that, it signals to your body, to your hormones, that you don't need to eat anymore and that you've had enough. It ensures that the hormone levels are steady. Things function the way they should. You build muscle, you get enough sleep, your energy's good. And satiety is not just about the food though. It's the texture, it's the presentation of it, it's the experience when you're eating, for example, with people, or sitting down calmly versus shoving it in your mouth standing while you look at a phone. And a lot of the ways that we have been eating and the way we see food strip this down so we don't signal those. And this is where we get problems like hormonal imbalances that happen with chronic dieting or with really restrictive dieting. It's messing with your hormone levels, which affects the way your body functions. And one of the biggest hormones to be affected is leptin. Leptin is the hormone that is released into your body to signal that you are full. It allows you to maintain a healthy weight for your body. When you are chronically dieting or you're really restrictively dieting, you're not giving your body what it wants, your leptin levels fall. They also can signal to your body, we're going into starvation, we need to protect the fat that we have, the body that we have, because we don't know when our meals are coming. This also means that meals become less satisfying to you and that you feel hungrier more often. And if you've ever been on a diet, you know that feeling. Why are you so hungry? The next part about the science when we talk about this, and I think this is the biggest one, and this is one that most sports dietitians will agree with as well, is the importance of bioindividuality. Our bodies respond differently to different things. They need different things based on genetics, our environment, including stress levels, so internal environment, external environment. And that is why you might go on one diet and your friend Maria goes on another and you have totally different reactions. It's why, for example, my sister can process sugar really fast and I can't. Why I can have loads of gluten and she can't. Bioindividuality is missing in diets, because it's impossible to have a mainstream diet that is targeted to each person's individual needs. The beauty of intuitive nutrition is that you are looking at this stuff, and I'll share a little bit later how to do that, but you are creating an experience where you actually do look at what your body specifically needs. And I'm not saying it happens overnight. It does take a little bit of time, but as someone who hasn't been on a diet for 13 years, I think that I can quite strongly tell you this works. And I've had my last client, or my first client ever, is from 11 years ago, and she's still a really healthy athlete 11 years later. So I really hope that you don't just hear this and think, oh, it's nice, but I'm going to stick with what I'm doing anyway. Now, the last one is the one that you know. All of you know this one. The stress and digestion, the gut-brain connection. When your body and you are stressed because you're constantly trying to control your food, you can't do anything social because then you'll be tempted with the food. You're creating an environment where your gut is not absorbing and digesting properly. So you're not actually getting the few nutrients that you're putting in your body fully. You are not digesting them in a way that is natural, and that's why you might have lots of diarrhea, why you might not even be going to the bathroom. That is the impact of dieting. And so when you start to regulate the internal and the external stress, your body is absorbing the nutrients better, it's feeding the muscles better, you're digesting the food properly, and also, by the way, this helps with sleep. So that is the science. I hope that that gives some sense for, okay, when I diet, it's about more than just these couple weeks. Segment 3, building healthy eating habits for good. So this is our final segment where I bring in everything we've learned and give you real ways to make intuitive nutrition work for you. First one, super easy. You are going to remember this for good, and that is to build balanced meals. You do it in 2 ways. 1, I want my fat, my proteins, and my carbs throughout the day. Do not forsake one of those, especially carbs, because you heard it's bad for you. Find your balance here. Some people do better with more carbs. Some people do better with less. The only way for you to know is to experiment. Related to your balanced meals also is going to be diversity. So imagine how boring it is if you eat the same foods all the time. This is why people get so bored and they stop eating healthy. Change it up. You also get different nutrients from different foods, and that's why it's so important to have a multiple mix of things. Don't just always have the exact same ones. Try to change up at least one meal a day. Now, next step, study your body. How do you react to certain foods? Is your body okay with gluten? Is it okay with dairy, sugar? How does it react? Experimenting to see these things. Some people also do blood tests and work with a dietitian, and that can be very helpful. But if that's not financially or time available for you, you can do it the old-fashioned way by experimenting with different foods, adding in, swapping out, not to restrict, but to find out. Get curious. Something I recommend that I used to do with clients is you do a food diary. But in this food diary, you don't care about how many cookies you had. These are the really helpful things in your food diary. So what did I have? Why did I have it? How did my body react? And you can also include, how did you feel mentally afterwards, if that's helpful? Did I feel a release? Did I feel guilty? This is information that allows you to move to the next step, mindful eating. So mindful eating is about more than just, being present while eating. I'm going to go over a few things. It does include that. So yes, it is important to ideally not look at a screen. Even if you're stuck at work, maybe you don't look at your laptop while you're eating at your desk, because that allows you to have the satiety we were talking about, the experience of feeling full. If you're looking at your screen, you're chewing faster. You're not feeling the food as much, the texture, for example. Your digestion is not going to be as good because you're eating fast. And you are more likely to eat more later on because you haven't had the full satisfaction of that experience. This is why mindful eating is so important. Next, we have our eating windows. So this is a principle that is hard for people who have always been intermittent fasters or who believe that you shouldn't eat after a certain amount of time to get used to. When do you need to eat? For me, I need to eat within an hour of waking up in the morning, or I feel my energy crash. You also don't want to worry about things like, oh, I just ate an hour ago, or it's not time yet for dinner. No. Focus on when you are hungry, because if you're following this mindful eating stuff, and you're following foods that are feeling good in your body, if you're still hungry, then you should still eat. Also, in terms of preparation, things that can really help you is focusing on versatility, picking groceries that can be converted to other things. Like spinach can be thrown in your eggs, in a salad. It can be used in a quiche if you want to get fancy. It's versatile. It allows you to experiment with recipes and not get bored, versus if you have something that only really can be used one way. Batch your basics. One of the things that I think is super helpful, and I know that people don't like to do this, myself included, but has been helpful, is on Sundays, my husband and I, we would cook big batches of quinoa, rice, lentils, cooked veggies. We're still trying to get in the habit again, but we did this for a little while, so that we had the main base and sides for a meal during the week, which made it a lot easier to cook because the basics were already done. It's hard when you're not motivated to create a bowl of rice. It feels like the hardest thing in the world sometimes. And then lastly, I want you to think about tracking your progress differently. So usually when you're dieting, you're going to track your macros, your calories, your weight, your inches lost. Here instead, we want to look at things like your strength. How many more reps are you doing in the gym? How much more weight are you adding to that barbell? Energy. How much more energy are you having on the days that you have your breakfast? These can be kind of just eyeballing what happens, or it can be you physically write down this stuff. You want to focus on this because I think it's important to have progress, but it's also important to recognize that it's not going to be the same kind of progress. So if you thought you would eat intuitive nutrition style and then use your genes to see if you're fitting in them, you know, that tiny pair that haven't fit for years, if you thought that was going to be how you measure this, I'm sorry to say it's not. But how amazing is it to think that you don't have to have that stress, that you can feel good in your body without doing it? Now, to finish, last part for you, 7 foods that would be great for most people to add to their diets. Again, prioritizing always your bioindividuality. First, leafy greens. They help with your overall strength. They keep your energy levels steady. Leafy greens are things like kale, spinach. People always say Swiss chard, but I feel like no one really eats that, so... Number 2, quinoa. I love quinoa. I think it's an amazing source. A lot of people think that it's a grain, but it's actually a seed, and it is packed with protein. It's packed with magnesium, all vitamin E. All this helps with the recovery of your body and gives you long-lasting energy. Sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are a great complex carb. They have a lot of fiber and vitamins, but they're also good because of being a complex carb. They give you a steady release of energy throughout the day. Number 5, yogurt. If you are doing dairy-free, still focusing on an alternative because we have the probiotics here. Now, there's a lot of research online and out there about like what probiotics are right for what people, etc., etc. But for now, let's just say that a probiotic yogurt of your choice to get in the habit that makes you feel good to help with gut health. We'll keep it simple for now. Avocados are number 6. Great source of fat that you can add to breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Helps with heart health and also is known to help with preventing muscle cramps because of the nutrients it has. Number 7, legumes, chickpeas, black beans, lentils. For the protein, I love lentils in particular. I have them several times a week. And I really have them even more now after hearing an episode on Ritual podcast with Dr. David Ludwig at Harvard Medical School. So what he does, which is really interesting, is he looks at the impact of diets, different diets, on obesity, metabolism, and just how they impact the body. And so he was talking about the different foods that we eat and like what are the ones that he thinks, what makes such a difference? And the number one of them was lentils, because of how great it is for regulating blood sugar levels, for promoting satiety and a healthy metabolism. So if nothing else, get some lentils. Find the ones that are great for you, because some people struggle with the metabolism aspect there, the digestion. I've shared with you a new approach. I've shared with you why most diets don't work. I've shared with you the science of why intuitive nutrition can be very powerful for you. And I've shared with you how to get started. The last part of this intuitive wellness series is going to be about addressing your body acceptance, feeling good in your body. So that will round out this series. And I want to encourage you to really share if any of this resonates with you. Message me on Instagram. Share this episode on your stories if you found it to be really helpful. Please tag me. It's Sade. And I will see you in the next one. I want to send you so much strength and energy, and know that if you listen this far and you take one thing from this episode, you are going to change the way you approach food. See you in the next one.